Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News.
Well, in the continuing face-off between the United States and Iran, social media users in the U.S. have had mixed reactions over an alleged $80 million bounty that has been placed on the president's head.
Anyway, that's well. Now, President Donald Trump's head in Iraq in the wake of General Qasem Soleimani's assassination, beg your pardon. It was alleged that during the televised funeral of General Qasem Soleimani, another unidentified eulogist said that $1 US should be tabled for every Iranian in the country, with the cash going to whoever killed the U.S. president. But recently, President Donald Trump has declared Iran appears to be standing down from the brink of the war after it carried out missile strikes on 2 Iraqi bases housing U.S. troops.
Now, the president confirmed that no U.S. soldiers were harmed in the overnight attacks, but in an apparent show of determination, he insisted America would impose economic sanctions on Iran that would remain in place until Iran changes its behavior. And later today in the House of Representatives, Democrats will hold a vote to take up legislation that will restrain the president from military action with Iran. And following a briefing by the Trump administration yesterday on why it carried out the drone strike in Iraq last week, killing General Qasem Soleimani.
Yemen, Syria.
That I walked into that briefing undecided as to whether to support the resolution under the War Powers Act introduced by Senator Kaine. Now, Senator Kaine and I have had some discussions. I've got some concerns with some of the language, particularly in some of the whereas clauses that he's introduced. He's agreed to make some changes. And I can say that after that briefing is what changed my mind. That briefing is what brought me on board, together with the amendments that Senator Kaine has agreed to make. I'm now going to support it. I walked into the briefing undecided. I walked out decided, specifically because of what happened in that briefing.
Joined Senator Lee in making the decision to also support the War Powers Resolution. I wanted to hear the intelligence first. What I hear was less than satisfying. But one of the arguments that's been bandied about in public, I think, is particularly insulting to logic, the Constitution, and the intent of our founding fathers. I, too, am a supporter of the president. I consider myself to be a friend of the president. I think the president's instincts on trying to show restraint and keep us out of war are good. I frankly think he will not unnecessarily escalate things. However, the debate is bigger than just this debate. The debate is a 70-year-long debate that began in 1950 with Korea and Truman. This is a debate, and many have written that Congress has abdicated their duty. Today, this is Senator Lee and I stepping up and saying we are not abdicating our duty. Our duty under the Constitution is for us to debate when we go to war, and we, for one, are not going to abdicate that duty.
Well, Onyekachi Adekoya, a security expert and public affairs analyst, joins us now to discuss the implication of all of this face-off on Nigeria. Thank you so much, Mr. Adekoya, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
A lot has happened since Friday last week, since General Soleimani was killed. Yeah. We've seen sympathy protests by members of the IMN in Abuja, the nation's capital. We've seen the Inspector General of Police in Nigeria place formations on red alert. And we've seen the U.S. issue travel advisory to its citizens in Nigeria. Just how high are the risks here for Nigeria, if any?
Thank you.
And I'm talking about the security risks.
Yeah, so of course there would always be security risk. You know, the world is now a global community, and we're now from global community, global village to global citizens. And then you have transnational crime, and you have people who have allegiances across the spectrum. And you would understand that behind every pressure group is also economic interest. If you must continue to enjoy the patronage of those who sponsor you, then you must also show some level of solidarity. So I think the Nigerian forces were right to be a bit concerned and take a cautious approach. Okay. Like you said, a lot has happened. It felt like almost a year. We opened up 2020, and you know, the action by the USA upended everyone's projections and calculations for 2020. Yes. So it was just a rather cautious approach to have taken. What are the security implications for us? Well, it's just everything has to be properly managed, because if the IMN are not properly managed, and understanding the way Iran approaches issues, they approach through their proxies. Yes. And in military strategy speak, the proxies are like their platforms with which they multiply force and multiply reach. While America has the level of sophistication they have achieved because of advancement in technology, I mean, when you balance the two parties fighting and you look at their strengths and their weaknesses, America, yes, has a lot of very disastrous arms within the arsenal, but Iran also can be very deadly, striking through proxies. Now, if you're going to strike through proxies, you're going to look for soft targets. You may not be able to hit them easily in areas where they are very fortified. Now, Nigeria is also a place of interest for the USA, and with the number of U.S. citizens in Nigeria, okay, they could easily be taken out in Nigeria, for example, than it would be for them to be taken out in Iraq or Yemen or some other places, in which case they've asked all their citizens to pull out of Iraq. So those were the security implications. Of course, you also know that capital is a coward. If you are saying to an investor who's supposed to come into Nigeria and bring in some, bring in some FDI, and, there's an alert and advisory that, hey, be careful, that also impacts on our ability to also attract investment.
I just want to talk about, the social-cultural dimensions in Nigeria vis-a-vis the last bombings by the Boko Haram and these attacks, and the fact that we know we have a case going on of the IMN in Nigeria currently. And
which has been proscribed.
Which has been proscribed, and there are strong affiliations. I mean, I think it was over the weekend. The Iranian embassy, in fact, did open a condolence register in honor of Soleimani.
Correct.
And one of the first countries to go sign the condolence register was the Vatican. The representative of the Vatican did sign that in Abuja. Let's talk about that vis-a-vis this international dynamics and sectarianism, because the slant of the matter is a sectarian outlook.
Correct.
The Sunnis and the Shiites.
Correct.
That's a deeper issue here.
Yeah, so that's a very fair point to raise. If we cast our mind back to the second quarter of 2019, you would have seen that Iran did put out some statements in support of the IMN in Nigeria. Cast your mind back for that, I think 2 or 3 years ago, when we seized a container load of arms going up north. You cannot overrule or take out completely that geopolitical conflict between Iran and the Saudis, representing 2 major Muslim sects. When you talk about geopolitical spread of these issues, and you then talk about religion also, the Shiites in Nigeria make up about 15% of the Muslim population in Nigeria. Nigeria is predominantly a Sunni country, which also brings me back to Iraq also. It was funny. Saddam was a Sunni ruling a Shiite majority. So you can't say because you are majority Sunni, nothing can happen. Also remember that not every Shiite is a member of the IMN. Okay, so there would always be those issues between Sunni, Shiite. Then you also have some people who peddle conspiracy theories and saying that the Shiite-Sunni thing is between Fulani and Hausas in the north. Saying that the Shiites are the Hausas and the Fulanis are the Sunnis. So just all people peddling theories. But to bring the point home, it's a very dangerous line to walk. And that's why you see that government took a very cautious, proactive approach to put the forces on high alert. Because if these issues are not managed, I think, what year was this now? When a cartoon caused serious flare-up in Kano. And nobody knew where this would go.
That was a Danish cartoon.
Exactly.
A Danish newspaper. And in fact, there were also drum beats, when Charlie Hebdo happened about 5 years ago.
Yes.
There was another one that came out of France. Another part I just quickly want to tackle is, our stance as a nation, we're pretty much non-aligned in Nigeria. So alignment, too, is something very important. You talked about proxies, you talked about allies.
Yes.
Saudi Arabia was quick to come to tread very cautious line yesterday by saying Iran is our neighbor, America is our ally. Yes. We don't want war. What should be the refrain from us here?
The question is, of course, our national international policy stand is always we're non-aligned. Again, when the big boys are having their issues, you also want to cautiously maybe stay out. Look at what Israel did. The Israeli Prime Minister said, we stand with America and their right to self-defense, okay? But primarily, this is an America-Iran issue. So therefore, Israel will stand out of it completely and let America and Iran sort it out. I think that's the right point and position for us to take. In any case, our president hasn't said anything. None of his cabinet members have said anything. Why we also know we could be affected, because basically at the heart of this issue is the Shia and Sunni, but nobody has said anything to pick a side. So this is just primarily an issue between America and Iran, and I think we'll do well to just leave it as that.
I mean, very quickly before we go on the break, we have spoken about the security concerns that this conflict could possibly raise. However, yes, I just want to touch quickly on the fact that there have been a lot of theories going around about the pricing of crude oil having a sharp influx going up. However, we were talking earlier, and you said it's already starting to come down.
Correct.
Do you think that this is something that, I mean, we don't know what the next course of action is going to be. What is your opinion on this?
Okay, so if you following the Donald Trump's statement when he came out to give an address, I think, and once the market saw that they were taking the route of de-escalation, I think that the price of crude fell very sharply within 2 or 3 hours by 3 or 4%. Okay, I mean, so nobody, I think I also saw a statement coming out from OPEC and saying that nobody wants a situation again in the world where the price of crude goes up to $100. So
Nigeria will do well to stay clear of this. Mr. Adekoya, we'll come back to you after this break. You're watching Arise, the morning show on Arise News. Join us again. Let's back to our conversation. Mr. Adekoya, security expert and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for staying with us, by the way. You said Nigeria should just maintain the stance that it has now.
A non-aligned stand.
Non-aligned stand, which is good. But I think I want to, step away from this face-off between Iran and U.S. and the implications for Nigeria, because you've analyzed that critically, and talk about some other security issues we're facing at the moment. Today is significant for the southwest in Nigeria.
Correct.
And that's because the governors in the southwest decided, after an upsurge in crime and criminality, to have Amotekun, the Operation Leopard, to fish out these criminals. There have been a lot of controversies around Amotekun. What's your take as they launch it today?
Okay, so I was hoping we even branch into this conversation first. So it's a very good point that you're asking the question. Firstly, I represent, though I'm not speaking fully for the body, an association that's called the Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners. Our first reaction to this was to look at the scope and the guidelines of the operation, because by law, you cannot create a security outfit, which clearly is within the remits, the exclusive reserve list of the National Assembly. But nothing stops the state government from having some kind of modalities for regulating vigilantes. Okay, so primarily, they may have used the wrong nomenclature. It's not a security outfit. It's a security program. So we call it a program, for the southwest states, born out of necessity. We are not new to the doctrine of necessity in Nigeria.
Indeed.
So the need is there. I always say our military is overstretched. The police is overstretched. NSCDCs and all the apparatus of state to address issues of security are overstretched. And once you get too thin like that, you begin to drop the ball in sensitive areas. And the places that suffer the most are the remote regions of different states. For example, I drove from Lagos to Iseyin. It will amaze you. It's about 5 hours drive. Even if you're doing standard one.
Is in Oyo State?
It's in Oyo State.
Yes,
5 hours from Lagos to Oyo. And I drove through very remote parts, and I didn't see any police presence. We don't have forest rangers. We don't have state police. It's funny, the arrangement in Nigeria is rather funny. The federal government is a sovereign, as the state governments are also sovereigns and co-equals. But where's the problem? The federal government can make laws, they can adjudicate laws, they can enforce laws. The state government can make laws, they can adjudicate, but they cannot enforce.
So that's on the exclusive list?
Oh, yes. Enforcement is on exclusive list. And this is very rather, abnormal. So what we have in the current set of this space we call Nigeria, it's a bit of a contraption which is faulty, based on faulty premise. So the state governors are having to take more responsibility. And I've always said on every platform I've been given to speak that we must bring the issue of security to the front burner when it comes to election time. Ask your state governors, because right now, if you point accusing fingers at the state governor, they will point to Abuja. The CP doesn't answer to them directly, so they have issues. So what more can we expect the state governors to do? You had a guest who was talking about the legality of the issues. We had some people who rumored, I think the PPRO of the Ogun State Command, who came out and said they would not work.
Police will be a part of it.
Which for me...
But that refrain too continues. I mean, if you check the papers today,
yes,
it was that same narrative too.
Yes, and, you know, there's a reason for it. You know, and, you know, I felt a bit upset about the whole thing. The police regulates the activities of the vigilantes in every state. Borno has his own vigilante, the civilian JTF, that is working with the military. The same military reported and the same police that said they would not work with their motor cooperatives. There are vigilante forces in Katsina. There's vigilante in Jos. There's vigilante everywhere, working with the police. And in fact, the military at some point came out to say that, you know, they had to collaborate with the civilian JTF because they understand the terrain better. What is at the heart of this arrangement? Intelligence gathering. Yes? Actionable intelligence. These people know the terrain better than the state security agents. Should I bring you information and say this and say, so we'll call you to action in a way that you hold even the state security agencies accountable? So are they running away from accountability? Or are they running from their constitutional duty? Everyone in Nigeria has the right to civilian arrest. So affect a civil arrest. I mean, if I see something going on, I can hold the person down and call the police. Now, why this is a bit different is because the hunters carry guns. Are they not licensed to carry guns? Even if they are not formally licensed, we know that hunting is a way of life of our people before even pre-colonial era. So you can't take away their arms from them because they carry Dane guns and they're allowed. There are vigilantes that are registered. We have the Nigerian Legion. They don't carry arms. We have all sorts of associations, you know, so initially as a licensed and regulated body, we were waiting to see what the guidelines and modalities would be. But from what we have seen, it does appear at the surface level that it's supposed to be a program that is predicated upon the support of the police. The police gives them the constitutionality they require to do what they need to do. So once you take out the police, then everything falls flat to his face. The police must come and own up to his own responsibility. This is an arrangement that seeks to help the police. If you don't know what is happening, what's the current police arrangement? We have how many local governments in Nigeria now? We have over 1,400 and something divisional police stations across the country. You bring somebody from Zamfara, he's a DPO of a remote place, maybe in Bogon. he doesn't know anything. So I think that, I mean, this arrangement is born out of necessity. I know there are issues of law and technicalities of law, but how do we go forward? How do we make this work? The president has signaled that he wants to make it work. Governor Fayemi seems to be somebody on the president's side. So it looks like there's a will on the part of I don't think this whole arrangement should be truncated. Yeah. Let's make it work and see what we can achieve with this arrangement.
I agree. Now, real quickly before we go, I wanted to just pick your brain on the coordination between these agencies, because, you know, you've spoken about the Nigerian police force. However, I think one of their biggest issues is the fact that these people haven't gone through a certain amount of training. They kind of are used to their own way of life. So how do they merge those parties? Who should be focused on doing this?
I think you always have on training, but, you know, it's a serious issue you always raise.
Skills.
Yeah, so they have training. Maybe they don't have contemporary training that is relevant to the now. Okay, when you look at the curriculum of the Nigerian Defense Academy and the Police Academy, maybe there's some things that you need to
very big thank you to you. We need to go now. That brings us to the end of the show. I'm Rufai Yosini.
I'm Adesoa Moran.
And I am Shaiton Atigari.